Dr. Lee Jinho pressed his sweaty palms against the control panel as red warning lights flashed across his research vessel's bridge. The engine's death rattle echoed through the small ship as it tumbled toward the green and brown planet below. Kepler 442b had looked so peaceful from orbit, just another world to catalogue in humanity's endless quest to understand alien life. Now it might become his grave. Come on, he muttered, fighting with the navigation system as the atmosphere began buffeting his ship. The hull groaned under the stress, and sparks flew from damaged circuits. Jinho had spent 3 years studying xenobiology, traveling from system to system, but he'd never been in a real emergency like this. His hands shook as he initiated the escape pod sequence. The pod ejected just as his main ship exploded in a brilliant orange fireball. Jinho watched pieces of his life's work scatter across the alien sky as his small escape craft plummeted toward the forest canopy. The impact threw him against the restraint so hard he tasted blood. When the world stopped spinning, emergency systems bathed everything in dim red light. He stumbled out of the smoking pod and immediately regretted it. The air was thick and humid, filled with strange scents that made his nose burn. Massive trees stretched up like cathedral pillars, their bark a sickly purple color. Something howled in the distance, a sound that made his skin crawl. This wasn't the sterile laboratory environment he was used to. Jinho grabbed his scanner and emergency kit, then started walking. He needed to find higher ground to signal for rescue, assuming anyone would come looking for him. The forest floor squelched under his boots, and strange insects buzzed around his head. Every shadow seemed to hide something dangerous. That's when he heard the clicking sounds, rhythmic, purposeful, like some kind of communication. Jinho froze, behind a tree trunk, and peered through the undergrowth. What he saw made his blood turn cold. 12 feet tall and covered in dark green scales, the creatures moved through the forest like ghosts despite their massive size. They carried spears and clubs that looked primitive but deadly effective. Their heads were reptilian, with intelligent yellow eyes that swept the terrain systematically. These weren't mindless beasts hunting for food. They were organized, tactical, working together like a military unit. The Veltar, as his scanner identified them, communicated through complex clicking patterns and hand signals. Jinho watched in fascination as they surrounded what looked like a large, deer-like creature. Their hunting strategy was flawless, cutting off escape routes and driving their prey exactly where they wanted it. When they struck, it was quick and efficient. One of them, slightly smaller than the others but clearly the leader, raised her head and sniffed the air. Jinho's heart hammered as those predatory eyes turned in his direction. He tried to back away quietly, but his foot snapped a branch. The sound echoed through the forest like a gunshot. Within seconds, the Huntress stood over him. Up close, her scaled face was both terrifying and beautiful, with intelligence gleaming in those alien eyes. Jinho closed his eyes and waited for the killing blow. Instead, he felt a clawed finger gently lift his chin. When he looked up, he saw something unexpected in her expression. Not hunger or anger, but curiosity. She tilted her head, studying him like he was the most fascinating thing she'd ever encountered. The Huntress called out to her pack in their clicking language, then carefully picked up Jinho like he weighed nothing. As they carried him deeper into the alien forest, one thought kept running through his mind. Maybe his real research was just beginning. The Huntress Kaya carried Jinho through the forest for what felt like hours. Her massive strides covered ground quickly, and despite being slung over her shoulder like a sack of grain, Jinho found himself oddly comfortable. Her scales were warm to the touch, and she was careful not to let branches scratch him as they moved through the dense undergrowth. When they finally emerged into a clearing, Jinho's jaw dropped. This wasn't some primitive camp he'd expected. The Veltar settlement spread out before him like a well-planned city. Stone buildings rose in organized rows, with intricate carvings decorating their walls. Gardens of alien plants grew in neat patterns between the structures. Young Veltar played in courtyards while adults worked at various crafts. The smell of cooking food drifted through the air. Kaya set him down gently in the center of the settlement. Immediately, dozens of curious faces turned toward them. Veltar of all sizes gathered around, clicking and chittering in their complex language. Some pointed at his pale skin and strange clothing. Others seemed fascinated by his small size. A few younglings tried to touch his hair before their parents pulled them back. "Don't be afraid," Kaya said in perfect, accented English. Jinho nearly fell over. "You speak my language?" She smiled, revealing sharp but surprisingly gentle teeth. "Many of us do. We have been preparing for this day for a long time." An elderly Veltar approached them, her scales faded to a lighter green with age. She wore elaborate jewelry made from polished stones and carried herself with obvious authority. The crowd parted respectfully as she walked. "Welcome, small one," the elder said in English that was even clearer than Kaya's. "I am Thyra, leader of this clan. You are Dr. Lee Jinho, xenobiologist from the human research vessel Aurora." Jinho stared at her in shock. "How do you know that?" Thyra's laugh was a warm, rumbling sound. "We have watched your people's ships pass through our system for 15 years. We have listened to your communications, studied your languages, learned about your cultures. When your ship began having engine trouble, we knew this was our chance." "You sabotage my ship?" Jinho asked, though he wasn't really angry. The scientific part of his mind was too excited by this revelation. "No," Thyra shook her head. "Your engine failure was genuine. But when we saw you were in trouble, Kaya volunteered to find you. We chose you specifically because your research focuses on communication between different species. You are exactly the kind of human we hoped to meet first." Jinho looked around at the faces surrounding him. These weren't the savage predators he'd imagined. They were intelligent beings with their own society, their own dreams and fears. "What do you want from me?" "To prove that humans and Veltar can work together," Thyra replied. "But first, you must prove your worth to our people. Not all of my clan believes in peaceful contact with outsiders. Some think humans are too weak, too different to be trusted as allies." "How do I prove myself?" Thyra's expression grew serious. "You must complete 3 trials that every young Veltar faces when they come of age. The trial of cunning, the trial of survival, and the trial of combat. These tests will show whether humans possess the qualities we value in our society." Jinho swallowed hard. He was a scientist, not a warrior. But looking at the hopeful faces around him, he realized this was bigger than just his own survival. This could be humanity's first real alliance with an alien species. "What happens if I fail?" he asked. Kaya stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. "Then you will be treated with respect and sent safely home. But the chance for our peoples to become friends may be lost forever." Jinho straightened his shoulders. "When do we start?" The first trial began at dawn. Jinho stood before a massive stone puzzle that towered 3 times his height. Ancient Veltar symbols covered its surface, and heavy stone blocks needed to be moved into specific patterns. Young Veltar warriors usually solved this by brute force, lifting the massive pieces with their incredible strength. For Jinho, each block weighed more than he did. "This is impossible," he muttered, running his hands over the cold stone. The gathered Veltar crowd watched silently, some with skeptical expressions. Kaya stood among them, her yellow eyes filled with worry. But Jinho wasn't just any human. He was a scientist. While the Veltar saw heavy blocks to be lifted, he saw physics problems to be solved. He pulled out his portable scanner and analyzed the puzzle's structure. The stone was dense, but brittle in certain spots. More importantly, the entire mechanism was balanced on a complex fulcrum system. Working quickly, Jinho dismantled his emergency beacon and rigged up a small explosive device. Not enough to destroy anything, just enough to create precise vibrations. He placed the device at a calculated point and stepped back. The controlled explosion sent tremors through the stone puzzle. The blocks shifted and rotated, falling into the correct pattern through carefully planned physics rather than brute strength. The crowd gasped as ancient mechanisms clicked into place and the puzzle glowed with internal light. Elder Thera nodded approvingly. "Clever. You solved in minutes. What takes our young warriors hours of effort?" The second trial took place in a deep cavern filled with poisonous gases. Veltar could hold their breath for extended periods and navigate by scent, but Jinho would suffocate within minutes. Again, he had to think differently. Using his water, purification tablets, and emergency medical supplies, he created a crude but effective air filtration mask. His portable UV sterilizer became a makeshift torch, revealing hidden passages that even the Veltar couldn't see. Instead of fighting the environment, he adapted to it. When he emerged from the cavern carrying the required crystal prize, several Veltar warriors clicked their approval. Kaya's expression had changed from worry to genuine admiration. The third trial was pure combat. Jinho faced a mechanical training dummy designed to test Veltar reflexes and strength. The thing moved like lightning and hit like a freight train. One direct blow would crush him. But Jinho had grown up playing video games and studying movement patterns. He'd also learned something important about Veltar culture during his stay. They valued intelligence just as much as strength. So instead of trying to fight the dummy, he studied its programming. Using his tablet, he hacked into the ancient but surprisingly sophisticated control system. Within minutes, he'd reprogrammed the dummy to fight alongside him instead of against him. The mechanical warrior became his partner, responding to his commands with perfect coordination. The crowd erupted in amazed clicks and roars. Even the skeptical elders looked impressed. But as the celebration continued, Thyra approached Jinho with a grave expression. "You have proven human worth beyond our highest expectations," she said quietly. "Now I must tell you why we truly need your people's help." That night, Thyra led Jinho to the settlement's observatory. Through their advanced telescopes, she showed him something that made his blood run cold. A massive asteroid field was heading straight for their system, too large and numerous for Veltar technology to deflect. "Our ships are powerful but primitive," Thyra explained. "We can travel between planets but not between stars. Your people have mastered long-distance space travel. Without human help, the Veltar will be extinct within 2 years." Jinho stared at the approaching death in the sky, finally understanding why his trials had been so important. This wasn't just about proving human worth. It was about forging an alliance that could save an entire species. The wilderness trial began before sunrise. Thyra blindfolded Jinho and led him deep into the forest, far from the settlement. When she removed the cloth, he found himself standing in a misty valley he'd never seen before. Twisted trees with black bark stretched overhead, and the air smelled of decay and danger. "You have 3 days," Thyra said simply. "Find your way home alive, and you pass the trial. Die, and your people will learn nothing of our offer." She disappeared into the mist, leaving Jinho completely alone. The first challenge came within hours. The edible plants Kaya had shown him near the settlement didn't grow in this dark valley. Instead, everything looked poisonous or rotten. Jinho's stomach growled, but he knew eating the wrong thing would kill him faster than starvation. He pulled out his portable scanner and began testing plants systematically. Most were indeed toxic, but he found a few safe options. Purple moss that grew on certain rocks contained nutrients. Small insects that fed on specific flowers were actually protein-rich and harmless. It wasn't a feast, but it would keep him alive. By the second day, bigger problems emerged. Strange howls echoed through the valley at night, and Jinho caught glimpses of large predators stalking between the trees. His scanner identified them as scarval, massive wolf-like creatures with razor-sharp claws and pack-hunting instincts. Jinho couldn't outrun them or fight them, so he got creative. Using his emergency medical supplies, he created a mixture of chemicals that produced a terrible smell when burned. The smoke kept the predators at bay, though it made his eyes water constantly. He also rigged motion sensors from his equipment to give early warning when anything approached his makeshift shelter. On the morning of the third day, everything changed. A terrified crying sound echoed through the forest, high-pitched and desperate. Jinho recognized it immediately as a Veltar youngling in distress. Every instinct told him to ignore it and focus on getting home safely. But he couldn't abandon a child, even an alien one. Following the sound led him to a deep ravine where a small Veltar, barely 4 feet tall, clung to a narrow ledge. Below, 3 hungry scarval paced back and forth, waiting for their prey to fall. The youngling's scales were bright green instead of the darker adult coloring, and her frightened clicks tugged at Jinho's heart. The logical thing would be to get help, but by the time he reached the settlement and returned with warriors, the child would be dead. Jinho had to act now. He quickly assembled a plan using everything in his kit. First, he created smoke bombs from his chemical supplies and threw them into the ravine. The Scarvol retreated, coughing and confused. Then he used his climbing rope and emergency anchor system to rappel down to the ledge. The youngling, whose name was Vera, was injured and couldn't climb. Jinho rigged a harness from his equipment straps and began hauling her up slowly. His muscles screamed from the effort, and sweat poured down his face. When the Scarvol recovered from the smoke and started climbing the ravine walls, panic nearly overwhelmed him. But Jinho's scientific mind kept working. He dropped his remaining smoke bombs and used his tablet's speaker system to play loud, high-frequency sounds that confused the predator's sensitive hearing. The noise bought him just enough time to get Vera to safety. When Kaya and a search party found them hours later, Jinho was carrying the exhausted youngling on his back, singing human lullabies to keep her calm. The sight of this tiny human protecting their child with his own life moved the Veltar warriors to tears. Back at the settlement, Vera's parents embraced Jinho like family. The entire clan gathered to hear how he'd risked everything to save one of their young. That night, Kaya approached him with something new in her eyes. "Today you became more than a potential ally," she said softly. "You became one of us." The final trial took place in the settlement's central arena, a circular pit surrounded by stone seating where the entire clan gathered to watch. Jinho stood in the sandy center, feeling incredibly small as hundreds of yellow eyes focused on him. Across the arena, his opponent stretched and flexed massive muscles. Drex was one of the youngest Veltar warriors, but he still towered over Jinho like a green-scaled giant. His arms were thick as tree trunks, and his claws gleamed sharp as knives. Traditional combat rules were simple: no weapons, no killing. But the fight continued until one opponent surrendered or couldn't continue. "I don't want to hurt you, little human," Drex said in his rumbling voice, "but I cannot hold back in ritual combat. It would dishonor us both." Jinho nodded, his mouth dry with fear. He'd been dreading this moment since the trials began. His scientific knowledge wouldn't help him now. Or would it? As the crowd fell silent, Jinho studied his opponent carefully. Drex was built for power, not speed. His center of gravity was high, and those massive muscles required lots of oxygen. Most importantly, he was expecting a traditional fight. The ritual horn sounded, and Drex charged forward like a battering ram. But Jinho wasn't there anymore. He'd rolled sideways at the last second, grabbing a handful of arena sand as he moved. When Drex turned to follow, Jinho threw the sand directly into his eyes. The crowd gasped in surprise. This wasn't how Veltar normally fought, but it wasn't against the rules either. Drex roared and swung blindly, but Jinho was already moving, staying just outside his reach. "Fight like a warrior!" someone shouted from the crowd. "I'm fighting like a human," Jinho called back, and he heard some approving clicks from the audience. For the next several minutes, Jinho used every trick he could think of. He made noise to confuse Drex's hearing, then attacked from unexpected angles. When Drex grabbed for him, Jinho slipped away like water. He couldn't hurt the massive warrior, but he didn't need to. He just needed to survive and show what human tactics could accomplish. The turning point came when Drex, frustrated and tired, made a wild grab that left him off balance. Jinho saw his chance and jumped onto the warrior's back, wrapping his arms around Drex's thick neck in a sleeper hold he'd learned from old action movies. For a moment, it actually worked. Drex staggered, surprised by the unconventional attack, but then his superior strength kicked in. He reached back, grabbed Jinho, and threw him across the arena like a rag doll. Jinho hit the sand hard, pain shooting through his ribs. Stars danced in his vision as Drex approached. The smart thing would be to surrender now before real damage was done. But something in the crowd's expression stopped him. They weren't looking at him with pity or disappointment. They looked impressed. He struggled to his feet, swaying but determined. "Not finished yet," he gasped. Drex paused, respect flickering in his yellow eyes. You cannot win, small one. Why do you continue? Because humans don't give up, Jinho replied, raising his fists again. We might lose, but we never stop trying. What happened next surprised everyone, including Jinho. Instead of finishing the fight, Drek stepped back and bowed deeply. I yield to your spirit, brave human. You have shown me something new about courage. The crowd erupted in shocked clicks and roars. Elder Thyra stood up, her voice carrying over the noise. The trial is complete. Jinho has proven that human determination is as valuable as Veltar strength. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down, Thyra took Jinho aside. Her expression was grave despite the successful trial. Now you must learn why these trials were truly necessary, she said, leading him to the observatory. Through the telescope, she showed him something that made his blood freeze. A massive field of asteroids was approaching their system, too large and numerous for any Veltar technology to stop. We have perhaps 2 years before impact, Thyra explained quietly. Our people will face extinction unless we can evacuate to another world, but our ships cannot travel between star systems. Only human technology can save us now. Jinho stared at the approaching doom, finally understanding the true weight of his trials. This wasn't just about friendship between species, it was about survival itself. The ground shook with the thunder of marching feet, just as Jinho finished sending his emergency message to Human Space Command. He rushed to the settlement's walls and felt his heart sink. Hundreds of Veltar warriors approached in perfect formation, their dark red armor glinting in the afternoon sun. These weren't like Kaya's clan with their mix of hunters, crafters, and families. These were pure soldiers, built for war. At their head rode a massive Veltar on a beast that looked like a cross between a rhino and a dragon. Even from a distance, Jinho could see the leader's scarred face and cold, calculating eyes. This had to be Voss, the rival clan chief Thyra had mentioned in worried whispers. Thyra of the Green Valley clan, Voss's voice boomed across the settlement, as his army stopped just outside arrow range. I come to save you from your own foolishness. Thyra emerged from the main hall, flanked by her warriors. But Jinho could see the math was hopeless. Voss had brought at least 3 times as many fighters. Kaya appeared at Jinho's side, her face grim. This is bad, she whispered. Voss leads the largest military clan in our region. He's been looking for an excuse to challenge Thyra's leadership for years. You harbor an alien parasite, Voss continued, pointing directly at Jinho. This weak creature has poisoned your minds with dreams of partnership with inferior beings. Surrender it to me, and I will show mercy to those who renounce this madness. Thyra stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly across the open ground. Jinho is our guest and ally. He has proven himself worthy through our ancient trials. Any who wish him harm must go through me first. A rumble of approval went up from her clan, but Jinho noticed some warriors looked uncertain. He couldn't blame them. Loyalty was one thing, but facing impossible odds for a strange alien was another. Voss laughed, a harsh sound that made Jinho's skin crawl. Then you choose death over wisdom, old friend. By ancient law, I challenge you for leadership of all clans in this region. When I win, the human dies slowly, and those who supported this alliance will serve my clan as slaves. The formal challenge sent a chill through the settlement. Jinho had learned enough about Veltar culture to know what this meant. Single combat between leaders, winner takes all, and Voss was half Thyra's age, scarred from dozens of battles. Grandmother, you cannot accept, Kaya said urgently to Thyra. Let me fight in your place. No, Thyra replied firmly. This challenge was aimed at me personally. I must answer it myself. But Jinho saw something else in the crowd's reaction. Some of Thyra's own warriors were whispering among themselves, casting doubtful glances his way. The unity he'd felt after completing the trials was cracking under pressure. That night, as both armies prepared for the coming duel, Kaya found Jinho sitting alone on the settlement walls. The stars above looked cold and distant, nothing like the warm points of light he remembered from Earth. Some of our people are wavering, she admitted quietly. They've never seen humans fight a real war. They wonder if partnering with your kind will make us weak. Maybe they're right, Jinho said miserably. I'm just one scientist. What can I really offer against someone like Voss? Kaya turned to face him, her yellow eyes blazing with intensity. You saved our child when you could have focused on your own survival. You completed trials designed for beings 3 times your size, using nothing but cleverness and determination. You've shown us new ways to think about old problems. She paused, looking out at Voss's camp where hundreds of fires flickered like angry eyes. But tomorrow, if Thyra falls, none of that will matter. Voss will kill you and enslave anyone who supported our alliance. Everything we've worked toward will die with us. Jinho felt the weight of 2 entire species' futures pressing down on his shoulders. Somewhere out there, the asteroid field continued its deadly approach toward the Veltar homeworld. Without human technology and Veltar cooperation, millions would die. There has to be another way, he said finally. Some solution that doesn't depend on Thyra winning an impossible fight. As if summoned by his words, a shooting star blazed across the night sky. But Jinho realized it wasn't a star at all. It was a human ship, responding to his emergency signal. Help was coming, but would it arrive in time? The real battle for both their species' futures was about to begin. Dawn broke grey and grim over the settlement as Jinho spread hand-drawn maps across the stone table in Thyra's war room. The formal duel wouldn't happen for 3 days, according to Veltar tradition, but Voss's army wasn't just sitting idle. His scouts probed the settlement's defenses, while his warriors sharpened weapons and practiced battle formations. Look at this. Jinho pointed to his crude sketch of the surrounding terrain. Voss is positioning his forces exactly where I'd expect. He's thinking like every military commander throughout history, overwhelming force applied at the weakest point. Kaya studied the map, her clawed finger tracing potential attack routes. Our main gate faces the open plain, that's where he'll strike hardest. Exactly. But what if we don't fight where he expects? Jinho pulled out another map, this one showing the settlement from above. Human military doctrine teaches us to use terrain as a weapon. Your people built this place in a natural defensive position, but you're not using all its advantages. Over the next hour, Jinho explained concepts that seemed alien to the Veltar way of thinking. Instead of meeting strength with strength, they could redirect enemy forces into carefully prepared traps. Rather than standing in rigid formations, small mobile units could strike fast and disappear before the enemy could respond. This feels like cowardice, grumbled Drex, the warrior Jinho had faced in combat trials. Veltar fight with honor, face to face. There's no honor in letting your people die for pride, Jinho replied firmly. Sometimes the bravest thing is fighting smart instead of fighting hard. Thyra, looking older than her years, nodded slowly. The human speaks wisdom. If Voss defeats me in single combat, these tactics may be our only hope of survival. While Jinho worked on defensive strategies, Kaya took on an equally important mission. She led small groups of her fastest hunters to the neutral clans scattered throughout the region. These smaller tribes had refused to join either side in the growing conflict, but they respected Kaya's reputation as a huntress. The old ways are dying, she told each clan leader they visited. The Skyfire approaches our world, and only by working with humans can we hope to survive. Voss would rather see our entire race extinct than accept help from outsiders. Her arguments were compelling, backed up by evidence of the approaching asteroid field and recordings of Jinho's trials. Slowly, cautiously, some of the neutral clans began to listen. They sent small groups of warriors, not enough to match Voss's army, but enough to make a difference. Back at the settlement, Jinho's defensive preparations were taking shape. He'd taught the Veltar how to dig concealed pits and cover them with branches, creating traps for charging warriors. Using their natural climbing abilities, defenders took positions in the forest canopy where they could rain arrows down on attackers while staying protected. The most innovative defense involved the settlement's water system. Jinho had noticed that Veltar engineering channeled streams through underground pipes to supply fresh water. With some modifications, those same pipes could flood specific areas of the battlefield, turning solid ground into impassable mud. Your people's strength combined with human planning, Jinho explained to a group of clan warriors. We're not trying to make you fight like humans, we're helping you fight like better Veltar. The breakthrough moment came when young Vera, the child Jinho had rescued during his survival trial, approached him with a simple question. "Why don't we use the sky voices like you do?" Jinho blinked in confusion until he realized she meant radio communication. The Veltar had observed human technology, but never thought to adapt it for their own use. Within hours, he'd rigged up a basic communication network, using salvaged parts from his crashed ship and equipment from the settlement. For the first time in their history, Veltar warriors could coordinate attacks across multiple locations instantly. Kaya's returning hunting parties brought news that several neutral clans were impressed enough by this innovation to pledge their support. As the second day ended, Jinho stood on the settlement walls beside Kaya, watching the enemy campfires flicker. In the distance, their combined preparations had transformed a hopeless defensive position into something that might actually work. "Win or lose tomorrow, we've already accomplished something important," Kaya said quietly. "We've shown that humans and Veltar can create things together that neither could achieve alone." A shooting star crossed the sky above them, and Jinho smiled grimly. Somewhere up there, human rescue ships were approaching. But the real rescue would come from the alliance they were building right here, one innovative idea at a time. The formal duel never happened. Voss broke tradition at dawn on the third day, launching his attack while morning mist still clung to the ground. His war horns echoed across the valley as hundreds of armored warriors charged toward the settlement's walls. "So much for honor," Jinho muttered, pressing his makeshift radio to his lips. "All units, this is base command. Enemy forces moving on the main gate. Execute Defense Plan Alpha." From his position in the central watchtower, Jinho had a perfect view of the battlefield. His hands flew over his tablet, coordinating defensive positions through the communication network he'd rigged up. It felt surreal, like playing a deadly video game where the pieces were real warriors fighting for their lives. Voss's first wave hit exactly where Jinho had predicted. The enemy warriors charged across the open ground, roaring battle cries and brandishing weapons. But instead of meeting a solid wall of defenders, they found something unexpected. The ground gave way beneath dozens of charging feet as hidden pit traps opened up. Warriors tumbled into carefully concealed holes lined with sharpened stakes. Those who avoided the pits found themselves sinking into thick mud as Jinho's flooding system turned solid earth into treacherous swamp. "Left flank, fire at will," Jinho called into his radio. High in the forest canopy, Veltar archers who had never used coordinated tactics before now rained arrows down with devastating precision. Instead of shooting randomly, they focused their fire on specific targets that Jinho identified through his binoculars. But Voss was no fool. His second wave adapted quickly, using shields to deflect arrow fire and boards to cross the muddy ground. The defenders' tricks were slowing the assault, but not stopping it. "Kaya, execute flanking maneuver." "7, Jinho transmitted. "Target the supply wagons at grid reference Delta 4. A kilometer away, Kaya led 50 of her best hunters in a lightning strike against Voss's rear lines. Instead of the traditional frontal assault Veltar usually favored, they moved like ghosts through the forest, striking hard and fast before melting away again." The radio crackled with Kaya's voice. "Supply wagons destroyed. Enemy reserves moving to intercept. Falling back to position Charlie." "Confirmed." "Well done," Jinho replied, already planning the next move. This was what human warfare was all about, not just brute strength, but information, coordination, and adaptation. The battle raged for hours. Voss's superior numbers slowly pushed the defenders back, but every meter cost him dearly. Jinho's tactical innovations turned what should have been a quick victory into a grinding, costly siege. Then, everything changed. A thunderous roar split. The sky as a sleek human starship descended through the clouds, its engines glowing white-hot. The rescue vessel Jinho had been hoping for had finally arrived. "Human vessel calling ground forces," came a familiar voice over Jinho's emergency. "Beacon. Dr. Lee, please respond. We're here to extract you immediately." Jinho looked down at the battlefield where his adopted clan was still fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. Kaya's voice crackled over the radio. "Base command, we're running low on arrows. Enemy breaking through Sector 3. The smart move would be to run, get to the landing zone, board the ship, and escape to safety. Let the Veltar settle their own disputes. while humanity prepared for proper first contact later. Instead, Jinho grabbed his radio with both hands. "Human rescue ship, this is Dr. Lee Jinho. I'm not leaving. Repeat, I am not abandoning my position." "Sir, that's not advisable. We have orders to extract you immediately." "Then you'll have to wait," Jinho replied firmly. "I'm not abandoning my friends." He switched back to the clan frequency. "All units, we have human air support incoming. Prepare for coordinated strike. On enemy command position." What happened next would become legend among both species. The human ship, recognizing Jinho's determination, began providing air support to the Veltar defenders. Precision strikes from orbit shattered Voss's formations, while Jinho coordinated ground forces with deadly efficiency. Kaya's voice came through the radio, filled with amazement. "The humans fight alongside us. Voss's warriors are retreating." From his watchtower, Jinho watched the tide of battle turn completely. Voss himself was falling back, his grand army reduced to scattered, demoralized groups. The combination of human technology and Veltar courage had proven unstoppable. As the sun set over the battlefield, Jinho realized they had accomplished something far greater than just winning a fight. They had forged a true alliance in the fires of combat, proving that two very different species could stand together against any threat. The approaching asteroid suddenly seemed much less frightening. 3 days after the battle, the settlement buzzed with preparations unlike anything Jinho had ever seen. The defeated warriors from Voss's army had been treated with surprising kindness, their wounded cared for, their dead honored with proper burial rites. Many had even asked to join Thyra's clan, impressed by the innovative tactics and honorable victory. But today was about something much more significant than military triumph. Elder Thyra had announced that Jinho would participate in the Cathara, the sacred bonding feast that made outsiders into true family members. No alien had ever been offered this honor in all of Veltar history. "Are you nervous?" Kaya asked as she helped Jinho understand the ceremony's importance. They sat in the settlement's main hall, watching clan members prepare elaborate decorations from colorful stones and woven fabrics. "Terrified," Jinho admitted honestly. "What if I mess up some important tradition? What if the food makes me sick?" Kaya's laugh was warm and reassuring. "The Cathara isn't about perfect ritual. It's about opening your heart to become part of something bigger than yourself. You've already proven you belong here by choosing to stay and fight with us instead of fleeing to safety." As evening approached, the entire settlement gathered in the central courtyard. Hundreds of Veltar from allied clans had traveled from across the region to witness this historic moment. Even some of Voss's former warriors attended, their expressions curious rather than hostile. The feast itself was magnificent. Long wooden tables groaned under the weight of roasted meats, exotic fruits, and dishes Jinho couldn't identify, but smelled incredible. Everything had been prepared according to ancient recipes passed down through generations. But the food was only part of the ceremony. Elder Thyra stood and raised a carved drinking horn filled with fermented fruit wine. Her voice carried clearly across the gathering as she began the traditional words. "We gather tonight not as separate beings, but as one family united by choice rather than blood. Before us sits Lee Jinho of the humans, who has proven his worth through courage, wisdom, and sacrifice. Tonight, we consume him into our clan, and he consumes us into his heart." The crowd clicked and chittered their approval as Thyra continued. "The Cathara teaches us that true strength comes not from devouring our enemies, but from embracing our allies so completely that we become one. People with shared purpose." Jinho felt tears in his eyes as he finally understood the title that had puzzled him from the beginning. The eating wasn't predatory, it was profoundly spiritual. By sharing this meal, he was being absorbed into Veltar society as completely as if he'd been born into it. The ceremony proceeded with each clan member offering Jinho a bite of food from their own plate, symbolically sharing their essence with him. In return, he offered portions of his meal to them. With each exchange, he felt more connected to these incredible beings who had become his chosen family. Young Vera, the child he'd rescued during his trials, presented him with a necklace made from polished stones. "For my second father," she said shyly, and Jinho had to wipe his eyes again. The celebration continued deep into the night, but the real significance became clear the next morning. Captain Rodriguez from the Human Rescue ship met with Thera and Jinho to discuss the asteroid threat. The conversation that followed would reshape the future of both species. Our preliminary scans confirm the asteroid field's trajectory and density, Rodriguez explained, projecting holographic displays that made the Veltar gasp in wonder. Standard evacuation protocols would require 17 heavy transport ships, operating continuously for 8 months. How many ships does humanity have available? Thyra asked. 3, maybe 4 if we're lucky, Rodriguez admitted. But Dr. Lee's reports suggest your people have some remarkable technologies we've never encountered. Your geothermal power systems, your bioengineering capabilities, your materials science, it's all incredibly advanced. That's when the real breakthrough happened. Instead of humans rescuing Veltar or vice versa, they would combine their technologies to create something neither could achieve alone. Veltar engineering would revolutionize human ship design, while human navigation systems would give the Veltar the stars they'd always dreamed of reaching. 6 months later, Jinho stood on the bridge of the Cathara's Dream, the first joint, human Veltar colony ship. Through the massive viewport, he watched their new home system growing larger ahead of them. Behind them, safely evacuated, came the entire Veltar population in a fleet of hybrid vessels that represented the best of both civilizations. Kaya joined him at the viewport, her scaled hand resting comfortably on his shoulder. Still think about that first day when I found your crashed pod, Jinho smiled, remembering his terror when he'd thought she was going to eat him. I never imagined it would lead to this, 2 species becoming one people, exploring the galaxy together. The Cathara teaches us that consumption isn't about destroying, Kaya replied thoughtfully. It's about becoming something greater than what we were alone. As their new sun rose over the horizon of their chosen world, Jinho realized that humanity's greatest gift to the universe wasn't superior technology or military might. It was the ability to see potential allies in the most unlikely places, and the courage to build bridges across the vast cosmos that connected all intelligent life. The Giantess Carnivorous alien Huntress hadn't eaten him after all. Instead, they had consumed each other's cultures, dreams, and futures, creating something beautiful and new among the stars. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.